So money is as old as human civilization, and civilization itself is reliant on possessing ways in which to exchange, account for, and transfer value. So what once started back in the beginning of history with money was once barter trading, just meaning exchanging goods for goods. And it was eventually replaced using standardized token money. Gold and silver were the first universally accepted forms of money. And they fit the bill so well that they were the primary form of money for centuries across the world and have been instilled in human culture. When people say gold, you automatically subconsciously know it's valuable. So that's the result of thousands of years of human evolution. So after gold as a currency, we then evolved to having paper money, which is just fiat currency. And that was our physical form of currency at the time. And China was the first to adopt paper money in the 7th century. So that was a while ago. So the 17th century is when the rest of the world caught up to this monetary invention and the new paradigm. And that's when they issued their first banknotes, but backed by precious metals like gold and silver. And that led to the birth of the gold standard. So now paper money was backed by precious metals stored in a treasury vault somewhere. So think like Fort Knox. And the banknotes represented this right to claim such precious metals from the bank. So this made it so much more convenient to transact. Think about lugging pounds of gold to the bank to buy a house, right? So using the paper banknotes, it made it much more convenient and portable to transact. So this was the case until 1944, when the gold exchange standard was agreed upon at Bretton Woods. This meant many countries fixed their national currency's exchange rate. So when I exchange my US dollars into the euro or my US dollars to the Indian rupee, they fixed the exchange rate of all other currencies to the US dollar, which was then the US dollar convertible into precious metals. So there was no longer an option for those banknotes of the US dollar to be converted into those precious metals going forward for individuals or companies, only central banks. So however, the Bretton Woods system ended in 1971 when the US dollar convertibility to gold was terminated. So paper money was no longer backed by anything of value or anything tangible, just faith. So how does paper money even hold value if it's not backed by anything? So this is where the concept like legal tender comes in. So governments assign values, labeling it legal tender. The fiat system which we use today has governments assign value to a currency by declaring it legal tender. And that just means the government decides whether a medium of payment will be recognized. So a medium of payment, that could be the US dollar, or it could be a cryptocurrency. But the government, it's on them on deciding whether it's going to be recognized for financial transactions, trade settlement, or commerce in any country or jurisdiction. Some fiat currencies like the US dollar and the euro are recognized internationally and used for global trade because they are backed by some of the most credible governments and the largest economies in the world. So to sum it up, fiat currency has value because a government uses its power to enforce this value, or just because exchanging parties agree to that value. That's all it is. So some describe this as a collective illusion, and it's not hard to see how problems could occur with this. But examples of when the fiat currency backfired under the control of irresponsible or corrupt governments prone to economic or political mismanagement was Zimbabwe. And if you haven't heard the Zimbabwe story, it's crazy because in 1998, inflation was 32%. 10 years later, inflation rose from 32% to 231 million% in 2008. And prices were doubling basically every day for basic goods and services. So that's called hyperinflation, and it basically deems the currency worthless. So Zimbabwe was one of the richest countries in Africa, but due to those bad economic policies, it turned the country into one of the poorest with economic devastation. So this is not the only example where this has happened though. So a loss in faith in a fiat currency equals economic turmoil, and it's only a given because a loss in faith in the currency, that's the backbone of the whole entire government. So economic turmoil all over the place with that. So people look to alternatives though during those economic turmoil times and loss of faith in fiat currency, kind of like we're seeing now. And they look to alternatives like gold or Bitcoin as of recent to hedge against a currency crisis and inflation.
If you're new to crypto or if you've been in crypto for a while and you still don't feel like you have a strategy, then we have the perfect thing for you, because it's one thing to have a strategy, but it's another thing to automate that strategy. So what we're doing right now is a waterfall flash sale. This is the start of week 1. We just launched our Stargate automated experience, which gives you access to utilize our custom automatic trading bots that we built for XRP, XLM, HBAR, Algorand, and a bunch of other altcoins. If you're sick and tired of watching the charts every single day, worrying, stressing, guessing about prices and if it's going to go up or down, then look no further than this, because this is the holy grail for any crypto holder or trader.
So the reason why this is important for us to know, and important for us to know about the evolution of money and the history of it, is because we are naturally moving our way towards digital money. So we started with bartering. We would trade goods for goods or goods for services, right? So if I had a cow and I had cattle and you needed cattle but I needed wheat, we would just swap and we would say, call it a day, right? Then we moved to gold and using precious metals as our form of currency. And then we moved to like coins and gold coins, trying to lower the amount of the divisibility of it, right? Because you're not going to go to the store to grab a gallon of milk with a block of gold. So we needed to shave it down. We needed to be more divisible. So then we created gold coins and silver coins. And then we moved to a paper fiat currency based system linked to precious metals. And then we eventually left off of that, and then we detached from the precious metals, and now we just have fiat currency backed by nothing besides the government enforcing its value via legal tender and via a couple other mechanisms that we get through during this mission 1 of Agartha. And guys, let me show you this right here, because we have the history of money on PBS. Everybody knows PBS. Wait on the date. Look at this date. Saturday, October 26th, 1996. When I tell you and I show you that this has been planned for decades, even 100 years, I'm not joking. We have proof right here. So the history of money, and it's in ancient worlds. What is money? By definition, it's something of value. But over the last 10,000 years, the material form that money has taken has changed considerably. From cattle and cowrie shells to today's electronic currency. Here, get an overview of the history of money. So in the beginning, we bartered. So barter is the exchange of resources or services for mutual advantage. And the practice likely dates back tens of thousands of years, perhaps even the dawn of modern humans. So some would even argue that it's not purely a human activity, but plants and animals have been bartering in symbiotic relationships for millions of years. So in any case, barter among humans certainly predates the use of money, but today individuals, organizations, and governments still use and often prefer barter as a form of exchange of goods and services. So from 9,000 to 6,000 BC, it was cattle. So cattle, which throughout history and across the globe have included not only cows, but also sheep, camels, and other livestock, are the first and oldest forms of money. So with the advent of agriculture, also came the use of grain and other vegetable or plant products as a standard form of barter in many cultures. And then in 1200 BC, we got cowrie shells. So the first use of cowries, the shell of a mollusk, that was widely available in the shallow waters of the Pacific and Indian Oceans, was in China. So historically, many societies have used cowries as money, and even as recently as the middle of this century, cowries have been used in some parts of Africa. So the cowrie is the most widely and longest used currency in history. And I actually just learned that too. So that's crazy right there that it's still kind of used in Africa. But in 1000 BC, we had the first metal money and coins. So bronze and copper cowrie imitations were manufactured by China at the end of the Stone Age and could be considered some of the earliest forms of metal coins. So metal tool money, such as a knife and a spade monies, was also first used in China. So these early metal monies developed into primitive versions of round coins. So Chinese coins were made out of base metals, often containing holes so they could be put together like a chain. And then we get to 500 BC, so modern coinage. So outside of China, the first coins developed out of lumps and silver, they soon took the familiar round form of today and were stamped with various gods and emperors to mark their authenticity. See, even back in 500 BC, they had the problem of proving currency or a medium of exchange is authentic. So it's hard to authenticate a gold coin, and there could be many things put in it. And it's really hard to authenticate that if you don't have the know-how, the knowledge, the resources, or the tools to be able to do it. But with blockchain technology, it's all verified through the blockchain autonomously. And we dive into that later on in Agartha, but for now, just wanted to tell you the difference there. So they soon took the familiar round form of today and were stamped with various gods and emperors to mark their authenticity. So these early coins first appeared in Lydia, which is part of a present-day Turkey, but the techniques were quickly copied and further refined by the Greek, Persian, Macedonian, and later the Roman empires. So unlike Chinese coins, which depended on base metals, these new coins were made from precious metals such as silver, bronze, and gold, which had more inherent value. Leather money was used in China in the form of 1-foot square pieces of white deerskin with colorful borders. So this could be considered the first documented type of banknote. Interesting. So the phrase to pay through the nose came from Danes in Ireland who slit the noses of those who were remiss in paying the Danish poll tax. That's nuts. Then we got 806 AD, we got paper currency. So the first known paper banknotes appeared in China. In all, China experienced over 500 years of early paper money. Crazy. Spanning from the 9th through the 15th century. Over this period, paper notes grew in production to the point that their value rapidly depreciated and inflation soared. So then beginning in 1455, the use of paper money in China disappeared for several hundred years. So this was still many years before paper currency would reappear in Europe and 3 centuries before it was considered common. And then we got into some more ones here with Native Americans, and then we got into some with clamshells. I'm not going to dive into those. We don't got to go that far. So then we got to 1860, and gold was officially made the standard of value in England in 1816. And at this time, guidelines were made to allow for a non-inflationary production of standard banknotes, which represented a certain amount of gold. Banknotes had been used in England and Europe for several hundred years before this time, but their worth had never been tied directly to gold. In the United States, the Gold Standard Act was officially enacted in 1900, which helped lead to the establishment of a central bank. And in 1930, we had the end of the gold standard. So the massive depression of the 1930s felt worldwide, marked the beginning of the end of the gold standard. So in the United States, the gold standard was revised and the price of gold was devalued. So this was the first step in ending the relationship altogether. The British and international gold standards soon ended as well, and the complexities of international monetary regulation began. So now we're in the present day, and today currency continues to change and develop, as evidenced by the new $100 US Ben Franklin bill. And I'm sorry, this is even a new article. So this is back to 1996, so they're behind the scenes right now. I don't even know at this point if credit cards and everything was out like that. But we went from banknotes and going off the gold standard to going to like credit cards, debit cards. And there was a set period of time where people needed to gain that trust and confidence that putting their credit card information on a website, they would do it until it became just a natural thing. And we're at that point. It's already become a natural thing. So the next evolution and step of money is electronic money. And our money is already electronic now. As we learned in the last video, it's all just a bunch of numbers on a screen. Mostly the currency, if you take the whole supply of it, but like 10%, 15% is consisted of actual physical currency, where the rest is just numbers on a computer screen. There's just that one switch that needs to happen where it needs to be built on top of blockchain technology. That gets rid of the problem of proving the authenticity, the double spending or counterfeit money. Building it on blockchain, you get rid of that autonomously. Then you're able to distribute and track and surveil kind of where all that money's going and see where it went and kind of tell someone so it's just a natural evolution. That's where we're headed, because even back in 1988, they say in our digital age, economic transactions regularly take place electronically without the exchange of any physical currency. Digital cash in the form of bits and bytes will most likely continue to be the currency of the future. All the way back in 1996. This was 26 years ago, guys. 26 years ago, right on PBS, and we're following along with it to this day. I mean, 26 years later, the plans are still not fully enacted yet, and we're at a time where we're right in the midst of it. We know it's going to happen between now till 2025, and really excited and further, and everything we're going to do by 2030. So first, the next thing, and the next thing, and they all just line up. Once you get to the end, you're like, boom, like it all makes sense. So very happy to have you guys in here. And to finish it off, so what is money? So we have the history of money. And what is money, first of all? Before we dive into the evolution of it, we got to understand it in general. And by definition, it's just something of value. But what is value? So value depends on the importance that people place on it, or governments place on it, or banks place on it. It all depends on what the market tells you the value is, right? So the characteristics of money, it needs to be durable, portable, and then you have the future, which is electronic money, which is digital cash in the form of bits and bytes, and will likely to be the currency of the future, as you just saw a 1996 article from PBS. I still can't believe it. And how does paper hold value if it isn't backed by anything? So that's where concepts like legal tender comes in, where governments assign a value, labeling it legal tender, and it has to be accepted for goods and services by everyone. And if it's not, then you are held accountable to the law at that point. That's what legal tender means. So I'll see you in the next video where we're going to dive into understanding inflation.
Are you sick and tired of just stressing and guessing, holding and hoping, and watching the crypto market go through its ups and downs and not doing anything about it? If you're someone in that position, then look no further than the Stargate automated experience. We just launched it and we built custom automated trading bots for XRP, XLM, HBAR, and a bunch of other utility coins. If that sounds of interest to you and you want to learn more, click the video below and I'll see you over there.